People rarely tell you that feeling replaceable doesn't always begin with rejection. Sometimes, it begins with comparison, not because someone tells you that you're not enough, but because your mind quietly starts measuring your worth against every person who walks into the room. You notice who gets the second glance, who gets the message first, who people remember, who they chase without hesitation. And somewhere along the way, you stop asking whether someone likes you. You start asking why someone would keep choosing you when there are so many other people they could choose instead. That question changes everything, because once it enters your mind, every silence becomes evidence. Every delayed reply becomes a prediction. Every new follower, every attractive stranger, every conversation you weren't part of, starts feeling like the beginning of your replacement. The strange part is that most people around you never notice this happening. Outwardly, you still laugh, you still flirt, you still show up, but internally, you're already preparing yourself for the moment someone decides they found someone better. Not because they actually have, because your mind has quietly learned to expect it. For some gay men, this fear can become especially loud, not because it defines being gay, but because personal experiences, social environments, and dating culture can sometimes reinforce the feeling that affection is temporary and attention is always shifting. The fear doesn't arrive overnight. It accumulates, one experience at a time. Maybe it was being compared to someone else. Maybe it was watching people lose interest the moment someone newer appeared. Maybe it was growing up feeling like acceptance always depended on how well you fit into someone else's expectations. Those experiences don't simply disappear. They become filters. Eventually, you stop experiencing relationships directly. You experience them through anticipation. You're no longer asking, "What is happening?" You're asking, "What am I about to lose?" That's a completely different way of living. Because when your brain expects replacement, certainty becomes impossible. Even kindness feels temporary. Even reassurance expires quickly. Someone tells you they care. It helps. For a day. Maybe an hour. Then your mind quietly whispers, they could change their mind. And suddenly you're looking for proof. Proof they still love you. Proof they're still interested. Proof they haven't found someone more exciting. Not because you enjoy doubting people. Because uncertainty feels dangerous. This is one of the quietest forms of emotional exhaustion. Constant emotional scanning. Always searching. Always monitoring. Always preparing. Long before anything has actually gone wrong. The difficult part is that today's world makes this habit easier to maintain. Every scroll reveals another face, another profile, another possibility. Dating apps were designed around endless choice. Social media was designed around endless comparison. Neither one intentionally teaches you that you're replaceable. But together, they can make almost everyone feel temporarily interchangeable. Someone disappears. Another conversation begins. Someone unmatched you. Someone else appeared. Everything feels replaceable. Even people. When you spend enough time inside environments built around infinite options, your nervous system can quietly begin believing that permanence is unrealistic. That everyone is waiting for an upgrade. That love is temporary. That attention is rented. Never owned. And if you've already experienced rejection before, those systems don't create the fear. They amplify it. You start editing yourself. Not because someone asked you to. Because you're trying to become harder to replace. You become easier. Less complicated. Less emotional. less demanding. You laugh at jokes you don't enjoy. You agree when you'd rather disagree. You apologize before anyone is upset. You become incredibly good at predicting what other people want. Eventually, you realize something painful. You've spent so much energy making yourself acceptable that you've almost forgotten what feels authentic. That realization rarely happens dramatically. It happens quietly, usually after another relationship ends, or after another conversation slowly fades away. You begin asking yourself, if I did everything right, why wasn't it enough? The answer isn't always that you weren't enough. Sometimes the relationship simply wasn't sustainable. Sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes timing matters. Sometimes compatibility is more complicated than effort. But when you've lived with the fear of replacement for long enough, those possibilities become difficult to believe. Your brain prefers a simpler explanation. I lost because someone better arrived. It's a painful story, but it's predictable. And predictable stories feel strangely comforting, even when they're cruel. One of the most difficult parts of feeling replaceable is how it changes the way you receive affection. Compliments become suspicious. Commitment feels temporary. Love starts feeling like something you have to continuously earn, not something freely shared. That creates a cycle. You work harder. You become more attentive, more available, more accommodating. People often praise you for being thoughtful. What they don't see is how much of that thoughtfulness is driven by fear. Fear that relaxing will make you forgettable. Fear that saying no will make you disposable. Fear that being fully yourself might finally give someone a reason to leave. That's the paradox. The more afraid you become of losing people, the harder it becomes to feel safe while they're still there. Presence stops feeling comforting, because your attention is already focused on absence. You start imagining endings before beginnings have finished. You mourn relationships that haven't ended. You grieve possibilities that haven't happened. Quietly, internally, without telling anyone. And because nobody sees it, everyone assumes you're doing fine. There is another contradiction hiding underneath all this. Feeling replaceable isn't always about wanting more attention. Often, it's about wanting consistency. To know that affection isn't disappearing every time life becomes busy. To know that distance doesn't automatically mean rejection. To believe that being chosen today doesn't require outperforming everyone tomorrow. That desire isn't dramatic. It's deeply human. Over time, some people discover something unexpected. The moments when they felt least replaceable weren't always the moments when they were most admired. They were the moments when they no longer had to perform for belonging, where conversation felt relaxed, where silence didn't feel threatening, where disagreement didn't feel catastrophic, where they could stop monitoring every expression on another person's face. Because emotional safety doesn't come from never feeling insecure. It comes from slowly discovering that relationships can survive honesty, that you don't have to constantly audition for the people who genuinely value you. And perhaps the hardest realization arrives last. The fear of being replaced often says less about your worth, and more about the stories your mind learned from earlier experiences. Stories that once helped you anticipate pain. Stories that now keep expecting it. Some stories protect us. Until they don't. The deepest human longing isn't to be everyone's first choice. It's to stop feeling like a temporary one. Because there is a profound difference between being noticed and being known. Between being admired and being understood, between attracting attention and finding a place where you no longer feel like you're competing to exist. Maybe that's why the fear of being replaceable hurts so deeply. Not because it convinces you that someone else is better, but because, for a while, it convinces you that being yourself could never be enough. And that's one of the loneliest stories a person can carry, until they begin questioning whether the story was ever true in the first place.